us from, maybe good evening or even good morning, but welcome to our discussion on the new Student and Exchange Visitor Program COVID-19 Guidelines. My name is Ron Cushing. I'm Director of International Services here at the University of Cincinnati, and I'll be leading the discussion today. I want to give you the parameters of how the program is going to work. First, do make sure that your mics are muted. We think we got everybody muted, but just in case, make sure your mics remain muted throughout the course of the presentation. There will be opportunities for you to ask questions through chat later on. But how the process is going to work this afternoon is I'm going to go over first and foremost what the new changes are that were produced by the SEVP on Monday. And I'm going to talk about what the university is going to be doing between now and when classes begin to make sure that those of you who either want to stay according to these new guidelines or return from abroad because of these new guidelines, we'll fill you in on what we're doing as a university to help you accomplish that. Certainly since Monday, we've received a lot of questions from you all on various topics related to this guidance. And so part of the presentation will be an FAQ that we've already developed with a lot of the common questions students have been having for us. But at the end of that, you will have the ability through the chat function to ask questions. And then my staff will be looking at those, and we will be certainly highlighting as many of those as we can with any remaining time that we have for the presentation. You should know that we are going to record this session, and we will post it on our website next week. And so it will be available for you to view later on. There we go. Little hesitation in the technology. So I do want to begin with just the statement that we want you to know that, we stand in the strongest opposition to this recent policy decision. And you should know that we're going to be working with our peer institutions in Ohio, across the nation, and we will be advocating with our elected officials to change ICE's stance on the issue. You are important and critical to our mission as a university and to the success of this country. And we are going to do everything that we can to make sure that we help you navigate this very stressful process. So with that said, I want to begin with just a brief recap of where we have been for spring and summer semester. So before we talk about where we're going, let's talk about what has been in place and what is going to change starting this fall. So everybody knows that for spring and summer, SEVP has put on hold many of the regulations that affect F1 international students. Chief among those was the fact that for spring and summer, students were allowed to remain in the United States in all online courses. The University of Cincinnati went online for the remainder of spring and all summer, and during that time period, you were allowed to remain in the United States even though you were in online courses. During normal times, international students are only allowed to use one course towards meeting their full-time enrollment requirement. They also suspended things like the ability to work on campus. So if you were able to work from your apartment, they were letting things like that happen. And so anybody who left the United States, one of the big rules has always been you cannot be gone more than 5 months. And during spring and summer, they suspended that regulation. Those were all great accommodations that SEVP provided for us. Now, their new guidance, understand first, the new guidance has only been out for less than 4 days. And so clearly there's a lot of back and forth between universities and the government about some of these things. A lot of what they write in these types of guidances aren't very clear. And so we are going to talk about what we believe and what our stance is going to be moving forward on what is produced so far. But do know that things could change between now and the beginning of classes. And if they do, we will certainly let you know. But on Monday, June 6th, the DHS issued guidance for fall semester 2020 enrollment. And the rule changes and relief measures have been altered based on the type of instruction that a university is going to be given in the fall. And Homeland Security has broke that out into three very distinct categories. Institutions are either going to be fully online, and there's rules to go along with that. They're going to be fully in person, which would put things back to the way they were before COVID-19 ever existed. Or the third option is the school is going to be instructing through a hybrid mix of in-person and online course offerings. The University of Cincinnati will be offering a hybrid instructional format. And so all the rules that we're going to talk about from their guidance stems from that. On just a second, I'm having a little trouble advancing the slide. There we go. All right, so now, due to UC's decision to use the hybrid instruction, again, both in person and online this fall, it appears that international students will largely not be negatively affected by this SEVP ruling. However, in order for UC students to remain in the US or to return from abroad, we must certify that your program of study is full-time and is not entirely online. Now, as you all know, full-time for undergraduate students usually means 12 credit hours. Full-time for graduate students usually means 10 credit hours. Beginning this fall semester, according to the new guidance, students must be enrolled in a full course of study that meets the definition of the SEVP guidance for hybrid instruction. And so we're going to try to whittle this down to the most basic terms for you. First thing is, students cannot enroll in only online classes and remain in the United States. So everybody's going to have to be in some type of in-person class to remain or come to the United States. But students will be allowed to take more than one class of online credits to meet the full-time enrollment requirement. So in the most simple terms we can state, what this means is that enrollment in at least one in-person or what the university defines as partially distance learning courses are what you're going to have to be enrolled in order to maintain your status in the country. And then you'll have to use online to get up to the maximum that you need to be enrolled in, 12 or 10 credit hours. Within the Catalyst system, that means you're looking for courses that are either listed as fully in person or partially distance learning. You cannot use courses that are coded as mostly distance learning as your in-person course. So that's the first thing that you need to understand about the regulation. Now, next, I want to discuss what the University of Cincinnati is doing to help you accomplish this. So up until Monday, many of our programs were planning on being completely online, and many students already had full online programs set up. That does have to change for the fall. And so we are going to make sure that every college has available to international students at least one in-person or partially distance learning course to enroll in this fall. Colleges are currently working on creating options where necessary, and they will be communicating with students before fall semester starts to facilitate proper enrollment. So be assured, we are going to make sure that if you want to stay in the US or you're currently abroad and you want to come back to the US, we will make sure that you have at least one in-person or partially distance learning course available to you. And again, some colleges and departments may not have those available today, but they are working on that, and you are going to hear about that. So in the last couple of days, you've gotten letters and emails from President Pinto, Provost Nelson, and you should know that in conjunction with all the deans and all the colleges, we are going to make sure that you have the option necessary to meet the enrollment requirement for this new guidance. Now, under these new guidance, the hybrid format will not continue to allow students who will enroll in online courses from abroad to remain active in the SEVP system fall semester. So what does that mean? So that means anyone who went home and you were planning on staying home for the fall, you can still do that. You will absolutely be able to enroll from abroad, for the fall. But we will not be able to keep your F1 SEVP record active, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a second. From a UC student standpoint, it is perfectly fine to enroll online from overseas this fall. And 60 days before you're ready to come back, hopefully for spring semester, we'll have to reactivate that record. And again, I will talk about what that process is going to look like in a minute. We will have some things that we will want you to do. Chief among them, we will want you to go to our iBearcats global system, and under the F1 Student Services menu, you are now going to see a new eForm called Fall COVID-19 Enrollment. You will have to tell us that you are not coming back for this fall. We won't know unless you tell us. And so this form is going to help you facilitate telling us so we can take the appropriate next step. The next step will be that we will terminate your SEVP record. And again, you'll have to notify us 60 days before you want to come back to the US, and we can have your record reactivated. Now, we want 3 groups of students to be using this new eForm. So first and foremost, we want it to be for students who are overseas who want to come back for this fall. So if you've been gone for spring and summer, but now you want to come back, you're going to need a new I-20 that says certain things that will allow you to come back. You're going to need to go to our system, fill out this eForm so we can send the appropriate I-20. It is also for students overseas who will remain overseas for the fall, either by choice or by necessity. Choice being you don't feel comfortable coming back this fall and studying in an in-person environment. Necessity means right now all of the embassies are closed and you may have an expired visa and you can't get a visa to come back. Or right now there are travel restrictions for many countries. You may be from one of the countries that we're not letting back in at the moment. And so whether you either choose not to come back or can't come back, we are going to want you to come and fill out the fall COVID-19 enrollment report. The final group of students we want to fill out this eForm are students who are just tired of dealing with all of this for the moment, and you feel like you want to take a break from studies for a semester or 2. And so if that is you, and that's what your mindset currently is, we want you to go to the iBearcats global system and fill out the fall COVID-19 report. Now, when you log into your system, into the iBearcats global system, and you get to the eForm, you're going to be asked to answer a series of yes/no questions based on those 3 populations that we just discussed. Again, you're gone and you want to come back, you're gone and you plan to stay where you're at for the fall, but enrolled, or that you're deciding to take a break. And with each one of those, when you answer yes, it will then prompt you to answer a couple more questions so we can tell you how to best proceed. If you're currently overseas, for example, and you're going to tell us you want to come back and you click yes, it's going to ask you, is your visa valid? Is your I-20 signed? Those kinds of things. So make sure you go to the eForm and you answer the questions appropriately. You should only be answering yes to one of those 3 options. The other ones you should be answering no to it. That will help us determine who needs I-20s to come back and what actions we might have to take on your SEVP record. So make sure you answer the questions appropriately. Now, Within the scope of these new SEVP regulations and what the university is doing, I want to discuss some of our special enrollment situations. Now, anytime you're dealing with a large research university like ours, and we've got doctoral students, master students, undergraduates, and students doing lots of things in between, there are lots of different scenarios that may come up, and it's important to understand which of those are going to meet the new SEVP guidance. So the first thing is, for those of you that are graduate students, and you're either enrolled in all research credit hours, or you're done with your coursework and you're writing your thesis or dissertation and you're only enrolled for 1 credit hour of thesis or dissertation research, that will meet the new SEVP guidance for enrollment. If you are a student that's going to be enrolled in co-op or a capstone, practicums, or other similar courses, those are going to be considered in-person courses. And so when you're registered for those, you will meet the new SEVP guidance. If you are a student that is on either optional or curricular practical training, you meet the new guidance set by SEVP. Although those who are on curricular practical training, it's important that you enroll for the proper course that's associated with that curricular practical training. If you're a co-op student, make sure you're enrolled in the required co-op course. If you're one of our graduate students participating in the many capstone options your programs offer, make sure you're enrolled in that proper capstone course. But when you do, you will be fine in terms of enrollment under these new guidance. Now, there's a very special group of students, and it's a very small number of students, but we have a pathway program, which are students that are preparing to move to one of our degree programs. Because SEVP considers these programs to be English language training, if you're a pathway student, you will have to be in 12 credit hours of either in-person or partially distance learning courses in order to remain here for the fall. And so if you're a pathway student, and again, there's very few of you out there, but if you are a pathway student, you will have to be enrolled in 12 credit hours of in-person or partially distance learning courses. And the International Admissions Office, will certainly be there to help you get enrolled for the proper things. And you'll be hearing more from them about those options as the summer progresses. Now, since the SEVP office made the announcement, you can imagine our phone's been ringing off the hook. Our email has been exploding with lots and lots of questions that students have about how their particular situations might be affected by this new guidance. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and we've developed a series of FAQs that we think are going to apply to the overwhelming majority of you with some of the questions you might have. And so let's go through some of those, and let's start with a basic one. So since UC moved to online study as a result of the pandemic, I moved away from Cincinnati. Does this new SEVP guidance mean I must move back to Cincinnati? Now, since the guidance requires attendance in at least one in-person or partially hybrid class, in most cases, that's probably going to mean yes, you're going to have to move back to Cincinnati unless one of your classes that's in person is, uniquely structured that might still allow you, to commute in from another location. But by and large, this means those of you who aren't in Cincinnati are going to need to be making arrangements to move back to Cincinnati. Now, this is a very frequent question that we've received, and it's a very important one. So it reads, I am graduating at the end of fall semester, and the only remaining courses I need to graduate will be offered online. In this case, can I enroll in all online courses and maintain my status? And the answer to that is no. You would have to be enrolled in at least one in-person or partially distance learning course in order to maintain your status. And again, work with your program on identifying that particular option. Again, colleges are working on preparing options for students to meet these requirements as we speak. Now, big question that we've gotten a lot of questions from students. What happens if COVID-19 situation worsens and UC is forced to return fully to online instruction? So under the new SEVP guidelines, UC at a minimum has to report that change to Homeland Security within 10 days. However, as we speak today, it is unclear whether that would mean students would need to immediately leave the U.S. or could remain. More guidance on this will be provided when and if such action needs to be taken. So for example, if the first week of classes, COVID-19 gets out of control and we have to close down again, that's likely going to have a different answer than if it happens in late October or November. But we'll wait until that happens, and we'll all hope that that situation never surfaces. Just a second here. It seems to be stuck again. There we go. All right. So, according to the return to campus plan, UC will be offering a hybrid mix of instruction until Thanksgiving break, and then we'll finish the remainder of the semester online. Does the new SEVP guidance mean I must return home at Thanksgiving? And the answer to that is no. You do not need to return home at the Thanksgiving break because the last 2 weeks are going to be online. You could choose to do that if you wanted, but it is in no way a requirement that you do that. So let's consider this question. I read the new guidance that students are supposed to have an I-20 issued that indicates I am not enrolled in all online courses. Will UC be issuing me a new I-20, and if so, when? So UC must certify to SEVP that your program of study is not entirely online. And we will make sure that every student's SEVIS I-20 record is updated by the required deadline. In the short term, we will only be issuing I-20s with this statement to students who are traveling back to the US. We want to make sure it has it on it so Customs and Border Protection or the visa office, if you are able to get a visa appointment, has that notation. But all other students, just know we will update the SEVIS system for your I-20 to indicate that, and then we will provide guidance later about when and how you can collect the new I-20. As you can imagine, potentially we're looking at issuing thousands of new I-20s, and with a pandemic going on, we certainly don't want thousands of people coming to the office to pick things up. And if we have to do things remotely, that's going to take us time to figure out and do. But just know this. We will make sure that your SEVIS I-20 record is updated with the appropriate annotation by the required date. Now, let's consider a student who has gone home and wants to return to Cincinnati for fall semester. What do I do to return to the U.S. from a university standpoint? So from a university standpoint, there's a couple of steps you need to take. First, you need to make sure you have a valid visa stamp in your passport, keeping in mind that embassies are currently closed if you need the new visa. Now, if you do have a valid visa, you need to make sure that you get enrolled in at least one in-person or partially distance learning course. Next, contact our office to have a new I-20 issued with the appropriate new statement in the remarks section indicating that you will not be enrolled in a program that is entirely online, okay? So again, do this using our new eform, the fall COVID-19 enrollment form. If you are currently overseas and want to come back for the fall semester, go to iBearcats Global and complete that eform for us. Now, I'm currently home and I want to return to Cincinnati for fall. What do I need to do to return from a travel standpoint? So beyond the other stuff we just talked about, You need to make sure your country is not on the list of countries currently barred from entering the United States. So right now there are over 30 countries that are on that list. If you are residing in one of those countries, you would be barred from entering the US unless you spend at least 14 days in a country not on the restricted list. You can find a list of the restricted countries on the university's COVID-19 website. There's an FAQ for international students. Just click on that and you'll find the list. In addition, everybody traveling back to Cincinnati needs to be aware that arrival back in the United States in Cincinnati, you have to quarantine yourself for 14 days before you're allowed to come back on campus. So if that's your plan, make sure you're planning in enough advance time to get here and self-quarantine for 14 days. In addition to that, you have to report your arrival to the university at covidwatch@uc.edu. So make sure that you keep both of those things in mind. We have, health and safety protocols that are in place for individuals returning from abroad. Make sure you understand those and make sure that you follow those. There we go. I am currently in my home country or will return home, and I've decided that I want to take a break from study altogether this semester. How does that affect my F1 status, and what do I need to do in order to return to UC in the future? All right, so now the first thing is keep in mind that your SEVS record will need to be terminated. And if you will be outside the US for more than 5 months, a new I-20 will need to be issued for your return. Again, this is another one of those situations where if you're deciding you want to take a break for whatever reason, make sure you go to the iBearcats Global System and submit the fall COVID-19 eform. It's very, very important that you do that. Now, in addition to that, prior to your returning, if you're going to be gone more than 5 months, you are going to be issued a new I-20 with a new SEVS number, and that's going to require you to pay the SEVS fee again. In order to get a new I-20, you're going to need to provide us with a letter from your college or department stating what your new expected graduation date is going to be. You're also going to need to go back to iBearcats Global and submit your sources of support so we can issue the new I-20. Once you're terminated and the new I-20 is issued, it requires uploading of new financial documents. So make sure you start the process early, especially if you need to apply for a visa stamp. Upon return, you're going to need to make sure you notify our office and follow any university protocols that are in place at that time. Right now, that means you'd have to self-quarantine for 14 days and report through the COVID watch email. But months from now, that may not be the case. So make sure that you're keeping up with what those requirements are at the COVID-19 site on the university system. We've gotten lots of questions about the health insurance policy and if it covers your medical expenses if you contract COVID-19. The student health insurance policy will cover COVID-19 expenses like it would for any illness or injury, but they make those payments based on, all of the guidelines for the policy. You have co-pays to meet, you have maximum out of pockets to meet. And so, likely all the COVID-19 expenses associated with your treatment wouldn't be covered by your health insurance plan. But again, the normal parameters of the plan are in place. You can log on and review that on the student health insurance website. So if that's a concern for you, please look at their details there. We've also got lots of questions about will there be new scholarships available to international students because of COVID-19? What I will tell you on a very limited basis, because more information is going to come from the university, either enrollment management if you're an undergraduate student, or your department if you're a graduate student. But there will be a scholarship called Bearcats Everywhere for students who can't come to the U.S. this fall. Beyond that, there is going to be no additional special scholarships for students remaining in the U.S. this fall. I know we're getting lots of questions from students about, financial difficulties because of COVID-19, but beyond the terms of what the Bearcats Everywhere is going to offer, or what your current college or department is offering you, that will be the extent of the financial support that's going to be available to you. Now, one of the things I want to stress is that today's guidance is subject to change. It's subject to change based on SEVP putting out additional guidance or clarification, changes UC might need to make, or that the state of Ohio mandates that we make. So just know that what we're talking about today potentially could change in the future. Also keep in mind that right now, there is great outrage about this new guidance, and there are lawsuits challenging the legality of this guidance. There is lots of advocacy going on with legislators. Any of those things, could change what we're talking about this afternoon. We will keep you updated on the COVID-19 site with the changes. Again, you go to the university's COVID-19 site at Public Health, there's a FAQ for international students. We will update that. We are currently in the process of updating that for these current changes. So you won't see them just yet, but we expect them to be up in the next day or two. So when you go to the site, you will see the link for FAQs. And then there is, lots of other links about admissions and students and employees, but there is a specific link for international students, and we will make sure that this gets updated soon and that we keep it updated as much as possible throughout the duration of the summer as things connect. All right, now, so let me take a step back here just a second and first tell you that we talked about some of your academics and immigrations, and we want you to know that certainly we're concerned about more than just those things. We're concerned about, your personal situations and how well you're adapting to all of this. You've been under lockdown in many cases for several months already. You've got all this stress going on. At the conclusion of today's program, you can join UC CAPS and UC International for a virtual Space Connect. Usually we're going to try to start that at 4 to 5 today. If this runs over a little bit from 4, you can join when it's done. But within the chat section, they're going to put up the link for this session. And so, you want to talk with somebody, you want to connect with some other students, see how others are doing, just whatever. We ask that you join the virtual Space Connect today, sponsored by UC CAPS. Now, with that, I am going to open it up for questions. And again, hopefully you've been using chat so far. My staff has been monitoring those questions. And now that you've seen all of the different slides and discussions, you may have some additional questions. And so how this is going to work is Lauren Steinman, one of our great programmers here, has been monitoring this. And she's going to jump in and try to summarize some of these questions, and I will try to respond to them. So Lauren, what do we have?
Hi all, you have been asking wonderful questions, and I have been trying to do my best to keep up with everything. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to summarize, kind of get to a larger point of some of the questions. If anything that's deeply specific, we're going to put up our email address for you to email our advisors later. But we have a lot of different questions. Right now, I'm going to jump in on some CPT questions, Ron. Just kind of how do the changes affect students on CPT? What if we're graduating in summer 2020? Can we still apply for OPT and stay for 60 days? Can you speak to that?
Sure. So let's start with the CPT question. So again, This new regulation will not affect those of you who need to engage in CPT for your program, whether you're an undergraduate in co-op, a graduate in one of our programs that has capstones or other projects, and your enrollment in those specific courses will meet the guidelines for the in-person registration that's requirement. So make sure first that you get your CPT authorized. Don't forget to do that. But then make sure you register for the appropriate co-op course, capstone course, whatever it is, and your registration will be fine. Now, when it comes to OPT, you're graduating this summer. This does not affect students on OPT whatsoever. This is only for students and their enrollment requirements for the fall quarter. It doesn't affect OPT at all. You can certainly still apply for OPT. It will be granted, and you engage in the employment that you find. And so it will not affect OPT in any way.
You anticipated my next general question. Thank you, Ron. We had some questions about researchers. So for research work, do we need to meet our advisor in person? How often do we need to meet? If we register for a 1-credit thesis research course, how will the rules affect that? And especially with a reduced course load in research.
What I will tell you is you should be doing what you would normally do for that class. So when somebody enrolls for, a research credit hour, along the way, it's expected you're meeting, talking with your advisor about the dissertation and the research or the project. You do what you would normally do in association with your enrollment in that class. And we are going to be considering your enrollment in that class as meeting the new SEVP guidelines.
Great. And for incoming PhD questions, if they are trying to switch from an MS to a PhD, do they need a new I-20? How does that affect things? And, if PhD students get RA cover stipends, how does that affect, how does all this affect that at this moment?
Well, certainly anybody who's going to be coming to the university or is here and your major or your degree level changes, you need to get a new I-20. And so make sure you're contacting our office so we can make sure we see the change that comes through the university system. The university system has to be updated with your new program of study, and then we will take it from there. Okay.
And again, speaking to just kind of that scholarships and financial question, if students are returning home to their home country for all online classes, do you have anything to say about that? Or can you speak to the tuition that they would be paying?
So again, everybody's going to receive more comprehensive information, either from enrollment management if you're an undergraduate or your graduate programs. But the new Bearcat Everywhere Scholarship is for people who are not going to be able to come to the United States to enroll in the fall. And essentially, it's going to be covering the non-resident surcharge of international student enrollment. And so again, you'll get more details of that from your program, certainly by the end of next week and moving forward. But that's how that will work for individuals who cannot come to the United States. For those in the United States, it's whatever your program is offering. There's going to be no additional financial support for those students.
And again, on the health insurance question, especially about deadlines for enrolling for health insurance is in September, but if an overseas student comes back in the spring, can they enroll for health insurance in the spring? And how does the health insurance work with covering costs of COVID-19 if they contract it?
Okay, so I talked about how it's covered by the cost, but let's talk a little bit about the other two issues. So if you enroll at UC for the fall from overseas, you will be able to waive the university student health policy. You're not here, you don't need it, but you have to declare the waiver and tell them that you're not in the country. If you then come in the spring, you will certainly be able to, and in most cases required to, purchase the student health insurance plan when you do arrive.
Thank you, Ron. And if the students are out of the country for more than 5 months, how do they need to navigate that? Do they need to get a new visa stamp? Do they need to get a new I-20?
So, you know, once we have to start terminating records for people who are gone, you know, if you are going to be gone more than 5 months, in order to come back, you have to get a new I-20. And you have to send us the sources of financial support, and you'll have to pay the CEVP fee again, and then you would come back. And so, you know, those of you who may not have muted mics, please mute your mic. I'm not sure why that's coming through there, but it is. And so, you know, that's how that's going to work. If you're outside the US for more than 5 months, you cannot come back on your current status. And so that goes back into effect this fall, you know, for individuals. And so you will have to monitor that. Those who are going to be gone less than 5 months, we're still going to have to terminate your record, but we will be able to reactivate it for you to come back. But if you're gone more than 5 months, we can't reactivate your old CEVP record. You have to get a new one.
For anyone who's here on a dual degree, do they still need to take the 7 in-person credit hours, or does that merge?
This fall, the requirement is only at least 1 in-person or partial distance course. And so you do not this fall have to meet the normal requirement, which would be, if you're an undergrad, 9 credit hours of in-person and 3 or more of online, or if you were a graduate, 7 and 3. For this fall, that requirement is waived. You only need to take the 1 in-person course, and the rest can be online. If you want to take more in person and they're available, you can certainly do that.
Fabulous. I think some students might have joined a little bit late. Can you just repeat for the colleges that said that they were going to be fully online, how are they going to handle that?
So first thing is, every college is going to be committed to finding an in-person course for a student who is here or wants to come back. So every college is committed to doing that right now. And so if previously you were told our classes are going to be online, that changed as of Monday, and your college will be making something available to you. They may not be able to communicate what that is today, but it will certainly be coming. So any student who wants to stay or wants to return, you know, will be given an opportunity to enroll in at least 1 in-person course.
Fabulous. A few students asked if I have a recitation in person, but the class is online. Do I qualify to stay in the US?
It depends on how the course is classified in the university system. So if it's classified as in-person or it's classified as partially distance learning, then it's going to be fine. If it's classified as fully online or mostly distance learning, it will not count. So you've got to look at how the course is classified within the university system. And if you're not sure how that works, your department or academic advisor can help you figure that out. But the advisors are all aware of the course offerings that you would have to meet, and they'll certainly help you navigate. This course is good, this course is not.
And once again, we've got a couple of people asking, do hybrid courses still fulfill the in-person requirement?
Hybrid courses do. So again, at UC hybrid, again, it depends on the classification. So UC has a kind of complex hybrid classification. Some are considered partially distance learning and some are considered mostly distance learning. The mostly distance learning courses cannot be counted towards your in-person course requirement. The partially distance learning courses can be. So again, one more time, so everybody's clear on that. This fall, you will need to be enrolled in at least 1 fully in-person course or one partially distance learning course. Beyond that, you can enroll in whatever else you want, all online, mostly online, but you have to be in at least one in-person or partially distance learning course.
And what do students do if they have visa stamps that are expiring shortly? Is there any change regulation on that?
There is no change on that, and my advice would be you do your best to get here before that visa expires, because once it expires, that means you are going to have to get a new visa to come back. And right now, embassies and consulates are closed, and when they reopen, we have no clue how long those backlogs are going to be, but they're going to be significant. And so, you know, if you're close to the visa expiring, start figuring out how you can get here before that visa expires.
There's a lot of questions about quarantining before classes get here. I know that the UC website addresses a lot of that. Would you like to say anything else about quarantining? Or,
just again, follow those instructions on that slide, that once you arrive, you're going to need to self-quarantine for 14 days, and you need to email the university at the COVID email address, tell them that you've arrived, and they will then give you further instructions and ultimately clearance when you're able to come to campus. But that is an important thing to keep in mind. You won't be able to get off a plane tomorrow and walk into your in-person class the next day. You are going to have to self-quarantine for 14 days. So make sure that you get here early enough to do that.
And we're getting quite a few questions about reduced course load. Again, how does this affect students on reduced course load?
It does not. So if you are on an authorized reduced course load, for example, a doctoral student done with your coursework and you're writing your dissertation, you simply enroll for your 1 credit hour of dissertation research and you are fine. If you are authorized for some other type of reduced course load, you just need to make sure you registered for the required course for that, and then you are fine.
And then there were some questions about going to a third country if they wanted to do their studies from, say, Canada, and how would that affect them?
Well, again, we will treat that like you're studying online from abroad. And abroad to us doesn't matter if it's your home country, Canada, or another third party. If you're going to be studying outside the United States, you can certainly do that, and we encourage you to do it. But again, we're going to have to terminate your SEVIS record, and then you're going to have to work with us on getting a new I-20 to come back when you're ready.
They're flying in, Ron. All the questions are flying in.
Take your time.
We are getting some questions that are a little bit repetitive. So if you see that I'm not reading out your question, please know that we will be posting this online for you to review for earlier. So please, your questions will be answered. If any of your questions are very, very specific to your case, we're going to be asking you to email our office so that we can look at your record. So another question is, to clarify, how will they receive a new I-20 with the annotations on it?
So again, you're going to go to your iBearcats Global record, and you are going to submit the fall COVID-19 eForm. And then based on what you answer, you know, we are going to be creating I-20s accordingly. For those of you who aren't traveling, again, do not expect us to be contacting you immediately to come pick up an I-20. We will make sure your I-20 is appropriately annotated in the SEVIS system to meet the new requirement, and we will figure out how they will be distributed later. We are only going to be issuing I-20s with that needed statement for the students who are traveling into the country, whether that means you're a new student coming in or a current student that's returning. You will need the I-20 with that statement, and we will provide it. Just make sure you submit the eForm accordingly.
And to everyone who's asking, this PowerPoint will be available after this session, so you'll be able to review that. And again, what does a capstone project qualify as?
Well, that will classify as an in-person course. So that would be counted towards your requirement to be enrolled in person for the semester.
We're getting some general questions that I feel that we've addressed. Hold for just a moment. We got a flurry of them.
Okay, I'll give you a minute to do that. So everybody be a little bit patient with us. But again, just to recap some of the major highlights while we give Lauren a minute to look at some of these questions. You know, as of Monday, you have to be enrolled in an in-person course this fall. And you only need to be enrolled in one. And that's either a fully in-person course or a partially distance learning course. You ready, Lauren? You got some more for me, or are you still looking?
I am still going through. Where did that one go? My apologies. If you are going to start your freshman year this fall online, do you still need to fill out the COVID form?
You do not, no. Again, so let me recap what the COVID form is for. So there's 3 groups that this COVID form is for. The first is if you are overseas currently and you want to come back to the university for the fall, you have to go fill out the COVID-19 e-form. Also, if you are overseas and you wish to remain overseas, either by choice or necessity, your visa's expired and you can't get one, you need to fill it out. Now that's for current students, not new students. New students, not sure how you found out about this particular session. We have one for new students next Tuesday morning. We'll address those questions more. So any new students coming in for the first time, make sure that you sign up for the Tuesday morning session, and you do not follow any of the guidelines that I'm talking about today. The guidelines I'm talking about today are for our current students, not new students, okay? And then again, the third type of student we want filling out the COVID-19 e-form is somebody who's just decided, you know what, I'm tired with all of this. I need to take a break from study. Okay.
And does our in-person class have to be in our program?
The in-person class is supposed to count towards completion of your program. Now that doesn't mean that so you know, you could have a general education course that is not offered by your college, but it's needed for your program. As long as the course is needed for your program of study, you can take it.
Some of our law students know that some of the law school historically has different policies. So is the 1 hour requirement valid through UC even for the law school?
Yes, it is.
And can teaching a practicum class be counted as an in-person course?
Well, it depends on how the course is classified in the university system. So what is the course name and number, and is it classified as in-person or partially distance learning or not?
And people are asking, what is the percentage of partially distanced learning?
Well, you really don't need to worry about what is the percentage. The courses are identified and you just need to make sure that you enroll in the course that's identified as either partially distance learning or fully in person. Do not enroll for mostly distance learning and try to use that as your one in-person class. Once you have your one in-person class, it doesn't matter what else you enroll for to get up to your 12 or 10 credit hour minimum enrollment requirement. It can be fully online, it can be mostly distance learning, it can be other in-person courses. But the one course that you're using to fulfill this new requirement has to be either in person, fully, or partially distance learning. Those are the only two options.
And when can we turn from taking fully online courses? What does it look like for spring?
I'm sorry, say that again, Lauren.
When can we return from taking fully online classes? When do we not have to take fully online classes?
Well, that will be when, you know, this COVID-19 pandemic gets more cleared up. You know, until that happens, the university is going to be operating accordingly. And unfortunately, some of these SEVP guidances right now, they're going to work like this. They're going to be semester by semester as the country sees how this pandemic goes. And so what was true for spring and summer was true for spring and summer. Now we've got the new guidance for this fall. And at the end of fall, we'll have to see what things look like and what the new guidance is there. Obviously, the hope for all of us is that this goes away largely, and that we're able to get back to normal instructions and normal everyday life. But we don't know if that's going to happen, and we'll have to pay attention to that. And if more modifications and rule changes are going to be in place for spring, we will cover those at the appropriate time.
And when will the COVID e-forms be live for the students to fill out?
They should be live over the weekend. And honestly, Lauren, I think that's probably a good stopping point. We're right about at 4 o'clock. If anybody has additional questions, you're certainly free to email us at international.students@uc.edu. I want to make sure that I remind you that immediately following this, if you'd like, our UC CAPS program and UC International is going to be offering a virtual space to connect. You could come and talk about some of this stuff if you want, or you know, how are you and your friends going to manage some of this stuff and get back? So, you know, again, we encourage you to join that. Lauren, it's in the link is in the chat section. Is that right?
It absolutely is. I just posted it twice. My apologies to everyone. And that is run by our wonderful counselors over at CAPS. One of the counselors in there was in International Student Affairs, so she'll be very ready to talk to you about all the. This is a very tough time, so there's a lot of emotions around all these regulations.
Yes, it is, and absolutely, and you know, given all that, again, we want you to know that we're here for you. I thank you for joining us today. Please take the appropriate actions based on what we talked about, and please, everyone, you know, stay healthy and stay safe, and you know, we hope to see you sometime face to face soon. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ron.